As Lake continues her private investigation into Nathan, and Nathan continues his investigation into Joel's sister and how she died, DeFoss not only takes off another person on his list, but also shows his face. So the first topic is Nathan's investigation. As we've seen previously, on his own, Nathan has been trying to find DeFoss, and he's been getting mixed results. Yes, he did get DeFoss on the phone and for DeFoss to even speak, but at the same time, he has to always go a bit further than he should in order to get some kind of reaction. In this episode, unfortunately, his investigation to DeFoss kind of conflicts helping Emily when it comes to looking into and protecting whoever's on the list. But getting specifically into how Nathan messes up, Joel's sister Teresa died because she was murdered. We understand that. But what we didn't know before is that she was also a drug addict, and she used to hang out with two guys, one named Adam, the other named Keith. Joel was pretty sure that one of them was probably involved, but he didn't know who, so when he wished death upon the person who killed his sister, Adam ends up being the one that died, and Keith, for unrelated matters, ends up in jail. Now, because Nathan is trying to get some kind of information on Faust, what he does is he looks up Keith and tries to have a conversation with him, but unfortunately Keith wasn't there when Adam died, so Keith gives the name of someone named Kate, and that seems to be where Nathan's next step is in terms of understanding, before this current list, how did DeFoss operate. Which, because he went all the way out to find Keith and look into that personal investigation, it means him being late for him investigating Eric Turner, who is the next person that's on DeFoss's list. So topic 2, we're going to break down into 2 parts, all of which deal with the investigation, but one part's going to deal with Alyssa's son Daniel, and the second part's going to deal with Eric Turner, who's the next one on DeFoss's list. When it comes to Daniel is Alyssa's son, and we're led to believe that when she was on the phone, her son was just kidnapped, and it was pretty much either she kills herself or DeFoss is going to use one of Nathan's fanatics in order to take out her son. So, to save her son, she stepped in front of that truck and got hit. Now, when it comes to people surviving, when it comes to people in Alyssa's family, there's her son and her husband, but her husband is a different part of Europe. So unfortunately, he's not there. This leaves Daniel, who thankfully gets saved by Nathan, but then comes the issue, which kind of flares up Blake and Nathan's beef. You see, Daniel, with his mother just dying and him getting kidnapped, is a little bit catatonic. So, as much as he's physically in the room, he's clearly not there. But in order to draw him out, Nathan starts acting a bit eccentric, and of course, Lake, thinking that Nathan is out of his mind anyway, this just raises more and more red flags. However, when he breaks through to Daniel, Lake kind of softens how she sees Nathan, since Daniel then provides some information that could possibly help the case. Though he notes that he really didn't see much, but at the very least, they're making progress. However, as soon as Nathan says that he lied to the kid, immediately Lake is blowing up. She is flipping out, and it comes to the point where Emily's supervisors are just as long as they get something, they don't care. And Emily is pretty much at this point as long as it's not illegally gotten information, she also is kind of tired of Lake and her wanting things to be so perfect when it comes to gathering information and evidence. And just to make matters worse for Lake, she even decides to question Emily in front of everybody. And this is after the two bond, in which actually that leads us into the Eric Turner situation. So, while Lake and Nathan were talking to Daniel, Emily on her own was expected to talk to Eric, but the problem with Eric is that he is a bit of a conspiracy theorist, so when it comes to the list, when it comes to the Ragdoll and all that, he doesn't believe it, and that makes Emily's job twice as hard. That and the fact that she's by herself during this, so that leaves her open to the Faust. For we learn after Eric's death, spoiler, that Eric had his house being tapped. And because his house was tapped, it seemed that the Faust knew that Emily was there and what she was trying to do. He also seemed to have learned Eric's Eric is a security guard who drives a van specifically for prisoners, and I think over the phone, else through other means, he also learned the the route which Eric takes for moving around prisoners, which surprisingly enough, he moves Keith, who we talked about in topic 1, but Keith is, as much as Keith tries to like break out and do something, it seems like he wasn't part of Faust's plan. But when you really think about how the Faust takes down Eric, it's very elaborate. Almost elaborate to the point where you almost want to wonder if the Faust may have more than one people involved, because it seems a little bit out of character. To break it down, the Faust's plan deals with stealing Eric's daughter's backpack, switching out the prescription pain drugs that Eric takes so that he hallucinates, and he planted a bomb underneath a bridge that Eric had to go through to get to whatever prison he's moving people to, and having that explode in order to cause a distraction. Now, between Eric leaving the prison with Keith and getting to where he's supposed to get, Lake is done with the Daniel thing for now, so she's with Emily. And also because Nathan, because of his investigation talked about in topic 1, was late to the briefing, which caused a lot of issues. And let's just say that Nathan, as much as Emily wants to be there for him, wants him to be by her side for not protection, but at least some kind of reassurance, he's really making it hard for them to be friends at work and also within their personal lives. So, because of that, Lake is with her, and Lake is bonding with Emily because Emily's the only one who seems receptive to it. And because she's receptive to it, Lake starts revealing things that kind of make you raise your eyebrow, but at the same time, Emily is kind of... I think Emily recognizes that as they're both women on a force that's mostly men, that there's certain issues that they both experience that makes it so she wants to have it where Lake has an easier time than maybe she had. However, as Lake starts going to the idea that she used to mess around with her old professor and things were kind of weird between them, as she starts talking about how women of color should take over the world, Emily seems to realize that Lake is a lot, and with her actually asking for Lake's name, it seems like Lake sees that as a means of, maybe she's getting through, maybe she's starting to make that connection. But even with them making that connection, Lake makes it clear that you can't, with her at least, you can't have bloodlines. You need to have clearly defined boundaries or else things happen. In the case of Eric, in a way you could kind of see that if Lake followed orders and stayed with Eric after the bomb went off and the distraction was made, maybe he would have lived. But at the same time, because of the distraction, Emily, Eric, and the person who drove with Eric had to deal with a prisoner who was trying to break out. Not Keith, because Keith seemingly died upon the car having stopped suddenly and hit his head. But a separate prisoner tried to break out, and they was beating the hell out of Eric's co-worker. They were taking on Emily, so pretty much Lake had to get involved. But while she's getting involved, Eric is in the back seat of Emily's car. He sees his daughter's golden bag, and next thing you know, he's getting bit in the face by some type of poisonous snake, and then he's dead by the time Lake realizes and tries to give him CPR, resuscitate him, but pretty much he's done. The Faust got another one. And you can definitely see that Lake getting her first death, the first one she's responsible for, has a negative effect on her to the point where when she's walking in the street toward the end of the episode, she gets dizzy and seems to faint. This is assuming that it's just about the guy and not also about her not probably eating properly, not sleeping enough since she's so focused on this investigation, and not to forget her fight with Nathan is only making her life harder, and because she keeps trying to gather evidence to further her point, including looking into his notebook, the little one he keeps with the Joel notes, she's definitely stressing herself out and making it so her life isn't getting any easier, it's just getting harder. So the last topic is the Faust. For reasons I don't know why, it seems that we may have actually gotten to see the Faust's face this episode. Now, at first it seems like they were just going to hide it and show that he's some kind of weird guy that likes to do some type of war reenactments. However, one of the guys who overacts during the reenactment, he decides to blow that man's hand off and make it look like an accident. And he takes that hand, we see him go to the suburbs, and in his basement or in his garage, he starts to peel away the hand layer by layer and draw it out. Now, we're not explicitly told that this guy is the Faust, but at the same time, he has everything shown that would lead you to believe this. But who knows? It could be misdirection, and again, we don't know if the Faust is just one person or is a network for who knows how many people that Mark Cooper killed. I mean, just to give you a ballpark, it's maybe about 6 or 7 that were told. And from those people, you could also count all their mothers, their uncles, cousins, lovers, friends, people that had a crush on them that they never talked to. All these people could possibly become the Faust, and could also be the network that the Faust uses to blackmail people. So this one guy could just be misdirection, but it's hard to say. So when it comes to the highlights, it's pretty much split between Emily and us getting to know her more, and also Lake, who's I wouldn't say is as much as somebody you love to hate, but it's starting to have layers to her that makes her a bit more complicated. Starting with Emily, what we appreciate is that they're really tapping into how difficult her life is because she is a woman of color who works on the police force. Now, thus far Ragdoll hasn't touched upon how police brutality operates when it comes to the UK, but it's definitely showing that when it comes to being a woman of color with authority, it's not the easiest thing. As with most industries, you can definitely see that Emily tries as much as possible to kind of be palatable. You know what I'm saying. She tries to get along with everybody, and even when it comes to Nathan and Lake, as much as she has to assert her authority with them, she tries her best to kind of keep things friendly and like it's a conversation, not an order. However, as shown, Nathan being late for a briefing and think he's going to come on for a ride along, or rather for the ride to trail Eric, she has to shut that down and show that despite their friendship, he's crossing a line by not respecting her position. And the same has to be done with Lake, because even though you can definitely see that Emily recognizes Lake in herself, or maybe a little bit, like her being new, feeling like she's not being able to do much, and hence her reporting Nathan because Nathan is definitely doing stuff that he shouldn't be doing. At the same time, while she understands Lake's position, I think she also recognizes where she went wrong and where Lake is kind of repeating. Yet, if she was to say something out of turn, that would make her part of the problem. And as said by Alyssa in the last episode, she doesn't have the same luxury as Nathan to make mistakes. So I think she's definitely trying to walk that tightrope, which is very difficult with Lake. Especially because when it comes to Lake, you can see she wants to bond with Lake. She even asks what Lake's first name is. And granted, as a British woman, she finds the idea of calling another grown woman Lake kind of weird, but she seems to be working with it. For even when she's going off on Lake, she doesn't suddenly switch back to Evans, but she uses the first name. And you can see that's part of her balancing act of trying to work with these people who definitely have strong personalities and opinions, yet she doesn't want to like diminish them the same way that maybe she was when she was first on the force. When it comes to Lake, I I don't want to say she's a love to hate kind of character, but for some I think she can probably fit into that mold. Mainly because the way she operates is in a way where you can see her loneliness, you can see her desperation for approval and validation. Yet the way that she goes for it is definitely not a way that works. As we probably said in the last video review, she can come off very antagonistic and definitely like she wants to start something. And it's not like she wants to start something like have a karaoke night or have some fun or whatever. She wants to provoke people, and nobody here wants to be provoked when they're looking into a serial killer. So when it comes to Lake, I think one of the things that may benefit her when it comes to future episodes is that with her being involved and possibly at fault for Eric's death, we're going to see that trauma that I either wrote about for the first episode or was in the video review. In that way, we're going to kind of see the process where it comes to being a new cop and dealing with, being involved with murders and being possibly responsible for someone not getting saved and the toll that takes on a person. And I hope that might save her, but when it comes to Lake, as much as she is definitely bonding with Emily and that's helping her character, I don't know how much Emily can be a crutch when it comes to her likability factor. In terms of on-defense topics, it's split between Nathan's story and us possibly meeting the Faust. Because it's a bit quicker of a critique, for lack of a better word, let's start with the Faust. I feel like the Faust just comes off very underwhelming and generic. He's this kind of weird white dude who works in his basement on things, draws these weird little pictures based off of the people who's cutting open, and it just gives you like generic serial killer. He doesn't necessarily come off as somebody who brings much intrigue, and I guess that's where the fear factor is supposed to come in, because he can be anyone. But it's just when you watch so many movies and shows with serial killers and weird guys who look like, I think his name is Thomas in the credits, who look like Thomas, it's just like, can't we do better? Can't we make someone more interesting? I mean, even if they made him like, I don't know, anybody else, it would have been better. Switching to Nathan. Nathan's on the fence mainly because I just can't get into his investigation into Teresa and the way he's trying to handle the Faust. In a way, you can kind of look at it as a good thing because it gives Lake more ammunition when it comes to them battling out. When it's him battling out how she doesn't have the experience to really be part of this investigation, versus her thinking that he doesn't have the mental fortitude to deal with everything going on. But outside of that, it doesn't really do much for him, in my opinion. It just makes this side story that at this point it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere good that will really benefit the show much. And then there's also, on a side note, him and Andrea hooking up toward the end of the episode, and it's just like, I get they have a history and they've done this before, but as for why they're doing it now, it's not really clear to me.